If we could come back together, please. So, Ashley D.
Yes, ma'am.
What did your partner tell you?
Just higher level Bloom's taxonomy, the reasoning skills, how difficult or how deep the reasoning skills are.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned Bloom's taxonomy, because we're going to talk about that a little bit today. We've already talked about relational understanding, trying to tie and make connections up there in your brain. We've already talked about that. This was supposed to be yesterday, so I'm going to go quickly through this. I think we have been through this slide, right?
Yes.
So that's what we were doing today. So the research on rigor says that rigor does not mean difficult. There's a difference between something being difficult and something being rigorous, okay? So rigor is, has to do with your cognitive processes, all right? Usually you're performing a task, you're solving a problem if something is rigorous. And then there's Bloom's and Webb's depth of knowledge that kind of categorize the rigorness of, oh, how rigorous, I'm stupid, I can't say rigorous, that's not even a word, for depth of knowledge. Okay, so just a reminder, how comfortable would you be if I asked you to describe and explain Bloom's taxonomy? Pretty comfortable, you've heard about it, you kind of know what it is. Some of you may know it a whole lot better than others because you've been teaching longer. I mean, I can rattle it off in, 2 seconds. What about Costa's taxonomy? Raise your hand if you've heard of Costa's taxonomy. Raise your hand if you heard it from somewhere other than me. Okay, good. So what about Webb's depth of knowledge? Oh, I'm so glad some of you have heard of that. You may want to sprinkle y'all throughout the room. Hess's cognitive rigor matrix? Nope. One person. Okay. Maybe 2 or 3. All right. Well, we're going to work with these today because these are going to guide you when you start writing your questions. This will be up in Dropbox this weekend. Okay. So you remember Bloom? That was his 6 levels. And that started in 1956. He went into many teachers' classrooms, observed what their questioning strategies were. So what do you think? That's a bad question. I began with what? So most of the teachers' questions would fall into which category do you think? Melissa?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. Kim, what were you going to say?
Application.
Application, Brenda?
I figured understanding.
Understanding. So far, knowledge, understanding, and application are what three people that I asked think. 95% of the questions, even on their test, were on information, the lowest, recall, the lowest knowledge, the lowest level, 95%. So if I were going to go into your classroom and record you and play back your questions to you during a conference, how confident are you that 95% of your questions would not be at the lowest level? Raise your hand if you're very confident. That's right, I'm not very confident either. So that's why we ask you throughout the academic year to record yourself and watch it yourself. Nobody else sees it. Record yourself and watch yourself and analyze your questions, because this is so important. So in 2001, Bloom's was revised. They changed the words. They changed them from nouns to verbs, and they switched evaluate and create, because the thinking was you have to be able to evaluate somebody else's work before you can create something new. That's just the thinking. But it's basically the same. So Costa came along and he divided this into 3 sections. 3 sections. He put knowledge and comprehension together in gathering information. He put application and analysis together into application and analysis. And he put synthesis and evaluation together into making judgments. So he kind of simplified it, which is great. It's simplified for teachers. That's wonderful. So then Webb came along with his depth of knowledge. And Webb said that Bloom's is good, Bloom's is good. Everybody in Bloom says, look at the verbs, look at the verbs, look at the verbs. You've heard that. What are the verbs in the different levels of Bloom's? Well, Webb said that what is after the verb is just as important. What is after the verb is just as important. Let me give you an example. Okay, I'm standing up here with this shirt that I've gained 40 pounds, but I can still get into it, all right? So describe my shirt. Craig.
Your shirt has bluish green leaves with a reddish orange flower and zebra brown stripes on the sleeves and a brown palm leaf below it with some gray flowers on the bottom.
Okay, so what level was that on Bloom's, do you think?
Knowledge, just
Knowledge,
observation.
just physical description, right? Much like when in science you say describe the characteristics of a plant. Okay? So what if I ask you to describe the effects of Europe, the effects on Europe of World War II? I don't hear y'all rattling it off like Craig did. What level would that be on Bloom's? Analysis. That would be much higher, wouldn't it? So you see, the verb is important, but what comes after the verb is just as important, because it can be a really simple description or a description that really takes some heavy thought. Yes?
But that, to me, is one of those things, because to me, that was like a recall question.
That's what I thought.
This, and this.
The effects of World War II on Europe?
Yeah.
Would that be, it would not be recall for me, because I'm not social
wouldn't.
studies and I don't know the effects. I would have to read and think about it and make some judgments. Okay?
I think he means like in a history class, if you were a history teacher asking the kids that, more than likely they've had a worksheet that has things listed, these are the effects. Boy.
If they have had that discussion, then it would be recall. You're absolutely right. If
Okay.
they have not had that discussion, then it would
It
be.
might be analysis. Yeah, I mean, that's one of those, it depends on
Yeah,
the
depends.
context.
Yeah, depends on the context. Very well said. So, and that's what I just did.
Question.
Yes.
I just want to understand why that question of the effects, if they had an understanding, is any different than if they had.
If they've already discussed it in class and it's already been discussed and explained and gone over it, then it is recall. Okay, if that has not happened and they have to research and make some determination, did it affect Italy more than it affected France, or Germany? Then they have to make some judgment calls, then it's higher.
So like with the best practices, when you came into MIGS, you probably didn't know that the best practices go from concrete to pictorial to abstract, but now that that's been drilled into our brains, we'll forever be able to recall the best practices include going from concrete to pictorial to abstract and to continue,
So now it's a recall question.
because it's a recall now.
Go ahead.
It just it just seems as though that question would be just a question, a confusing. For example, I'm not good with history, so it would just stump me versus make me feel that that's challenging me to.
Okay, so it would stump you, and it's your assignment, so what would you have to do to solve it, to answer it?
Obviously, a little research of the question.
You have to research, you'd have to make judgment calls, you would have to determine what you wanted to write in that only 2-page paper. Okay, so you'd have to cull out some things that you didn't feel were as important, include some things that you did. So it's a higher level. There was a hand up over here? Nope, okay. So, in Webb's depth of knowledge, there are 4 levels, and they kind of parallel Bloom's. Okay, there's level 1, which is recall and reproduction, not sexual reproduction. So recall of a fact, a term, a principle, a concept, or to perform a routine practice, or a routine task, or a routine algorithm. Okay, there's level 2, which is a little bit higher. You have to select the process or the algorithm. It may be 2 steps. You select your algorithm, you get an answer. Remember when we did density up here? That was level 2. Okay, that was level 2. Level 3 is strategic thinking. And so you have to plan, you have to take certain steps to get to where you want to go. And that would probably be the effects of World War II on Europe type of question. And level 4 is extended thinking, which would be like the create and evaluate in Bloom. All right? So I don't want to mislead you because when you're writing your questions for your lesson plan, you need all kinds of levels of webs. You need all levels. Level 1 is predominantly, it's most likely used to assess prior knowledge. You will see where they're coming in. And then you build from that, you go to level 2 and level 3. Most teachers don't ask level 4 questions because they don't have the time to let the kids kind of decide what they're going to learn on their own. You know, that's like project-based learning where they totally do it by themselves. Okay? So don't misunderstand me and think that all of your questions have to be a higher level. But when you write your lesson plans, we will be paying attention to your levels of your questions. And we would like, or I would like, levels 1, 2, and 3 be included in your lesson plans. Yes, ma'am?
I'm looking at the next gen science education standards and actually developing, based on what Browning is saying now, a list of verbs. And what I'm looking at includes develop models to describe, gather and make sense of information to describe, develop a model that predicts and describes changes, etc. So when you're thinking about questions, NGSS might be a resource that you might want to look at.
Yeah, for science. Yeah. So your age or grade does not determine what level of depth of knowledge questions you ask. You should ask those levels 1, 2, and 3 for any grade, any age, any level. And anything that's routine is a lower level. Even though it takes several steps, it's a lower level, okay? Such as addition, subtraction. So anything that you have to explain is a higher than 1. Maybe a 2, maybe a 3, but it's higher than 1. All right, I'm trying to do this quickly, so stop me if you need me to stop, because I'm watching that clock. All right, so level 2 includes math and science word problems, making observations, making predictions. Now, have we done any of that in here? Absolutely. Level 3, developing an argument, critiquing the work of others, solving non-routine problems. Have we done any of that in here? And we'll do a whole lot more next week, because next week will be kind of heavy math. Levels 3 and 4, we have multiple sources that are needed. For instance, when you were researching the effects of World War II on Europe, more than one right answer often, and almost always more than one way to get to the answer. All right? So then we have rigor and difficulty. So, I know, Ashley, what's the difference in rigor and difficulty?
Rigor is, I would say, something that's, or I guess scaffolding, challenging concepts to a student. And difficulty would be something that they're struggling with that they don't understand.
Okay, so would y'all turn to your shoulder neighbors and talk about the difference between rigor and difficulty and give an example in your subject area? Give an example in your subject area.
Well, it comes to the process. Well, the rigor is comes to the process.
That's why I said my definition of cognitive rigor is challenging environment. Because they're like, well, this is how I was taught. Where does this new information fit with that?
Self-confront doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be difficult.
I mean, I think of difficulty. When you say, oh, this is so difficult, because you're struggling with it, then whereas rigor, it's challenging, but you're working on it. I see those. So, for example, rigor, I think, is taking a math equation and going from the equation to a graph. that they can explain the work that